Hey guys, it's Adam. I'm going to run you through a quick tutorial here on how to set up some bakes in Marmoset to export to Substance. Now, there's a couple things I need to run through real quick in Maya, and this is just sort of naming systems and UVs. So for this one, because I have a little bit of a lip in here and some other things I want to capture, I've set up a little bit of a different UV setup. So I've got two caps, and then I've got the piece wrapping around. I've aligned these so they're completely straight, and they should bake pretty nicely. And then I've set everything to soft. Um, if you wanted to, you could also set this to harder, and it looks something like this, but I think we're going to be okay the way it currently is. We can check and see that once we bake. As far as naming goes, I've set everything to be the same name, pcube 1 through 3. And then everything has a low suffix, right? So you can see this. On this piece here, I've split up the UV per cut. So any of these 90-degree angles here, I've cut and separated out on the UV sheet. And the reason for that is it's going to give it a little bit of a cleaner bake as we project things. Okay, a little bit of spacing as well so that the normals don't get mixed up. I also want to do some symmetry on this. So what I'm going to do here is hit the symmetry button, going to mirror it on the object. Okay, and you can see if I toggle this on different axes, it's going to work differently. And hit 3 to make sure it's merging correctly. And then I'm going to grab this UV sheet, this shell, and I'm going to adjust it over. So I'm going to hit W, or W, D, X, snap that to the bottom right here. And then I'm going to shift this over one UV sheet, just like that. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, and then we should be good to go there. So I'm going to grab my 3 low poly objects here. This one is probably going to be a little bit off, but I left it in there anyway just to give an idea of how this all works. I'm on isolation mode, so I'm going to click off of that. It's this button right here. Click off my high, so I just want these low. And now I'm going to adjust these 3 other objects over. So I could just hit Control L to layout, but in this specific example, I'm going to just manually adjust these into place, like so. All right. Good stuff. Now I'm going to grab these objects and export. And even if these were grouped together, I could say pcube as the name. That'd be fine. But just go ahead and hit export. One last thing to make sure you're doing, make sure this all has the same material. So we're going to apply a Lambert here. We're going to call it pcube matte. This isn't critical. It's just going to show up in Substance Painter. So FBX export, export selection. Click pcube low. So we're going to overwrite this and hit export selection. Now over on the ZBrush side of things, I've got a couple things set up here. We have the same name setup, pcube, right? I've got something a little bit more interesting here. So if I isolate these two, right, I wanted a band wrapped around this, and all I've done for this is extract it. So I have this object here, right? Start from beginning. So I've got the object, I've masked the center, done an extract, zero meshed. Actually, let's fill this here. So you can see this. Do line fill. So I've done an extract, and then from there I've done a ZBrush, get a little bit lower, dynamic subdiv, and then added some thickness, and flipped on post subdiv to give it a little bit of that smooth border, and I turned it up to 2 here. Okay, and then hit apply. And then the last thing that I did is I went through and I applied a vertex color. And the way that you do this, you can always grab a color in ZBrush by hitting C. But in order to apply it, you hit color, fill object, like so. Okay, not too complicated. And then I've done this for the same thing over here, right? So I've got this piece here. I wanted to add a little bit of a trim. All I did is mask using, I believe, creases, or let's see, we can check over here. If we go over to mask. Mask by cavity. And then I adjusted my intensity, which gave me this mask here. I've adjusted a little bit, right? So I've got a sharpened mask here. And then if I come over to the subtool, I can run through this as well. So I have a couple things going on here, right? A couple different pieces. I selected the pieces I want, removed the pieces I didn't, so just using grab select like this. Grab select this, geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, ZBrush. I've turned adaptive size and curve strength down, up to dynamic subdiv, flip that on, give ourselves some thickness, click post subdiv, and you can see we get a little bit of a trim here. Hit apply, and then I want to inflate that just a little bit to make sure we're maximizing the fill in these areas here. Okay, so here we've got a trim. Pretty cool. And then I'm going to grab this purple material, color, fill object. Okay, so now this is vertex painted as well. As far as naming goes, I've named the suffix high and high 2. You could also name this high 1. So we'll do that real quick. Flipped over, high 1. You can't see that. Rename high 1, like so. So this is going to drop into the same folder. Make sure these are all visible. And I put them into a folder here so I can toggle everything on and off. And then anything I don't want to export, I can put into another folder named hide, so I can just toggle that off when I don't want to see it. Next, go up to ZPlugin, FBX import export, and hit visible. One last thing I need to cover here. If I scroll down, I can click export. These are some options. You may want to turn off group export subgroups. What that's going to do is if you have a different, for example, if I had this as a poly group, right? It would split up my high poly. So we don't want that, so we'll turn that off. You can also turn on smooth normals. This actually applies per object, I believe, but yeah, so we'll turn that off. So if you're having an issue with something, it's something you can check right there. So I've gone up here to ZPlugin, FBX export, and then I'm going to click on high right here. It's going to ask me if I want to replace it. I'm going to hit yes. And then it's going to go through my subtools that are visible and export. Tell me, yep, I've exported everything. I'm back over in Marmoset, so I'm going to go ahead and load in what I've done. So click this new Baker file right here. And then under load, you can click this button. So I'm going to click these both and hit open. And it's loaded in some extra materials. I don't want these, so I'm going to just hit delete on them. Okay, so now I have a high material and a low material. On my high up material, I've just turned on this vertex color under albedo. And I'm going to apply it to all of my high objects. So turn off everything, click high, take my high material, apply it to my bake group. Next, I'm going to turn off high, turn on low, apply my low material to that. And here we go. Now the last thing that I want to do is check my bounds on each of these objects. So I'm going to toggle these all off, turn on this bottom one, and we're going to expand it here. So under low and high, I'm going to turn these both on. You can see I'm getting a little bit of a extrusion here, so I'm going to turn on cage opacity. Looks like we're good. If this was a little lower, you see it peek through. Next thing, I'm going to go over to this object. Same thing, low and high. Turn on cage opacity and adjust my offset. The other thing you're going to notice here is my high poly has imported in both our main object and that band. So pretty cool. Make sure this high material is applied. Okay, and now last one. Cage opacity, adjust offset just above that space, and then turn off high again. Sweet. So we're missing one of these, so I'm going to check. I've got it right here. Okay. So we've got 3 different objects. Now I can go ahead and hit, you can hit preview, but you can also set an output here. And this is our quick bake result. Not too bad. I'm going to also check, make sure this is all applied. Check our occlusion. So I'm going to do unlit with occlusion map. Make sure this is being applied to just the low poly, and throw that on. So it looks like we didn't bake our ambient occlusion. I'm going to click that on, bake one more time, and I'm going to actually drop, well, leave it at 2K, it's fine. Let that run. You see a couple things here. This skew is kind of messed up, so I'm going to go over to pcube 1. Click my low, paint skew. Just adjust this a little bit. Okay. And hit preview. You can actually do this with the normal map a little quicker. You can see our symmetry is being applied correctly here. So our high poly actually does not match this. If I turn off low and turn on high, and our high is getting, we don't want to diffuse. All right. But you can see this little dot here is not showing up in our low because I did some symmetry. Now, On the ambient occlusion side of things, you can see I'm getting a slight artifact along this line coming around. If I want to get rid of that, there's two things I could try. So the first one is I can, if I did want it to fill in, you can do two-sided. I'll show you what that does. And it will just fill in black. So if I pull this object out, you can see it's done a black fill anywhere that the ambient occlusion actually clips through. And because it's slightly off here, so if I did a 0.9 scale, you'll see it will fix this, but I'm only showing this so that you can see it. It's basically stacked on top of each other in Z fighting. So you can see it's adjusted that and fixed it. So that's one option. The other option that I could try, and not the scale thing, this is just a specific option because of how this is stacked. So I'm gonna undo this, but the other option you could try is to go in here and do exclude when ignoring groups, and this is going to basically just tell it, no, I just want to apply AO to this object on its own, not as a scene. Okay, hit apply, it'll do that bake, and you can see now it is being excluded. So we've got a clean bake here, clean bake here. We do the same thing to this object. And exclude. Hit bake. So now these are all baked separate. You may or may not want to do this. It just applies things in a little bit of a different way. So you can see I'm getting AO on the insides of objects, but not as a whole. So I'll turn one off just so you can see how that. And then just for purposes of example, I'm gonna scale this down just slightly. And I'm doing this I'm gonna do this per bake group. So it's moving all of the objects within that bake group down. Got a nice little gradient there in the crease. If this piece is ever going to move, that's an issue because now you're going to get a big black bar there. So only do this when you know it's not going to be moving under skinning or anything else. And the last thing here, you can see my skew is a little skewed, messed up. So I'm going to paint this in. And one last bake here, and then I'm going to check my normal, make sure that's all in, and we should be set. So I'm going to turn Lambert on, check this out, looks good. I'm getting some artifacting just because of the sub-D modeling I did. It was not perfect at all. My skew here is needing a little bit more of an adjustment. So clean this up a little bit. And if you are looking at your normal, you can hit a preview mode and it'll just live update for you. Now for the vertex color, you can do this through here. So material ID, configure, I'm going to do albedo. So it's going to pull from the albedo bake, and you should see this in a quick second here. There we go. So I had to make sure all of these objects were being applied correctly. There's nothing extra in here. It's just vertex color, no normals, no nothing else. And then hit bake one more time here. And this should be set. Everything's looking good. I should be set to export. And then you can add any other maps you want to export here. All right, so now we're looking into, we've got a new project here. I'm going to do PBR metal roughness. Do 2048, and then your normal map format should match your substance, or not your substance, your Marmoset bake settings. So flip your Y channel if needed. So all you have to do for that is go into your normal settings, click this, flip Y. We should be good, so I'm not going to mess with that yet. I'm going to load my low here. Click open. And then add all of those textures. So prop textures. Set an export here. You can see it populates. Grab these, open. So you can see the name that we applied to that low poly material in Maya is now our texture set list name. Got our layer stack. Shrink this down. Do 3D only. And then for our materials, I'm going to go to project, drag and drop these. So we got an ID map, we've got an ambient occlusion, we've got a normal map. So you can see this is messed up, so I'm going to go here to project configuration, flip this open to OpenGL, and now it's looking correct. This is the Z fighting I was talking about. So not optimal. You'd want to avoid that, but I'm going to leave it for now. And if I wanted to fix that, remember I just go over here to the low, exclude, and then hit bake again. Now it will have updated that folder, so all I have to do is hit reload. Drag and drop it, and problem fixed. Okay, I can toggle through my materials here as well. B, you can see I've got ID map. I'm going to hit bake mesh maps here, and I don't need normal, I don't need ID, don't need ambient occlusion, and we'll see how it does here. Curvature is not getting anything, so I believe it needs the world space, so we can make sure we have that on. Normal's object. Click bake. And I'm going to import that, so that was an extra file I needed. So click File, Import Resources here. Add resource. Normal OBJ. Flip that over to texture, import to project. And import. Let's try baking one more time. Generate from normal map here. There we go, there's a better curvature map. All right, so if we're full with all of our materials here, we got normal, we got a world space, ID, ambient, curvature, position, thickness, everything. then we are all set to go. So let's throw in a smart material. So I could throw in a copper. And now if I want to apply this to just one piece, I can do add a black mask, add paint, click this paint icon here. Actually, instead of paint, I would want to do add by color. So add color selection. Pick color, and then I can select this, do this purple. And I can go through and do the same thing for any other materials. Add a black mask, add color selection, pick my color, add black mask, add color selection, pick color. Do this one last time. Okay, and then you may come across something like this where you have a seam. This is just a layer stack thing, so if you're running into that, then you may need to have a base material that is matching, or you can adjust the levels of the color selection. So I can go in here and do a tolerance that's higher. That seems to work. You can also adjust your base layer. So we could add a layer here and adjust this so it's darker, so it doesn't stand out. Go through here, you can see different types of things going on. Everything is applied properly. And then if I want to paint in something, I can always do that as well. For now, I'm just going to apply a general dirt to everything. So using this, I can delete out what I don't want. Turn off this rubber base, and you can see this gets applied to everything now. There's a dust being applied. Could also do that with a paint layer if we wanted. And we could do a smart material or a smart mask on that and do edges scratches or something just to apply that as well. So you can see the effect you can get with this is pretty cool. If you start mixing and matching different materials, applying global ones, all these different things. So it can be a pretty powerful combination. You can always use this to mask out areas as well. So if I wanted to do that, all I would have to do is add a color selection, pick the color, and then flip this. So now it's going to exclude this from this group. Add a black mask, add a color selection, pick color. And now we can also adjust, like, if we wanted to do a little bit less and mix it. You can also add extra colors. So if I wanted to do it on multiple pieces, that's always an option. So now you can see I'm controlling two different groups of materials. And then, of course, you can always paint on top of this as well. Paint isn't going to blend quite as well, so you'd want to use something like a dirt brush or something to that effect. There you go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now I'm ready to export my textures. So I've added a folder here for prop game textures. I'm going to drop it into there. Just something separate from my bake folder and export. And now I can check this out in Marmoset. So I'm going to drop in a couple of these different materials. So we've got an albedo, we've got a roughness, we've got a normal, we've got a metal, and flip the Y channel to make sure that matches. And you can see I've got all this going on now. Can test it out in some different scenes. Can also do a ambient sky or a blurred sky, or even a plain color. Set up some render settings here. That's kind of interesting. So it's grabbing some other stuff in the scene. And there we go. There's some materials going on. Nothing too complicated, but hopefully this clarifies how you do this. And at any time, you can always adjust these things as well and just reload them. So if I want to add a new material to a piece, it's pretty easy to fix this. So we could just scale down, maybe something like so. Go into layer, add by, do a black mask, and then color selection. pick color. And then we could also even do a add paint, mask by object, and do something like that. Now, if I want this to be applied under these other two global materials, I can always just move these above it. Export textures. As soon as it's done, flip back over to Marmoset, and you can see it will update. You can always hit these buttons if you need to. There you go. So it's just a quick little tutorial there, and hopefully it gives some clarity to the subject and how to set this stuff up.